Frank Borman wasn't fearless. No good pilot was. But most of the fear he had started out with was shaken out of him on the day in 1961 when he nearly died in the skies over Edwards Air Force Base in Southern California. Death while flying was not Borman's plan, any more than it was the plan of the pilots who did die that way in that place at around that time. But in the business of test flying jets, it was inevitable that every now and then one of them would fly straight into disaster, tumble out of the sky, and, to use the no-big-deal phrasing preferred by test pilots, make a hole in the ground. Borman knew the odds as well as anyone, but he had been angling for Edwards for a long time, ever since his West Point graduation in 1950. Like most of the men flying here, he had not traveled a direct route to the skillet of the California desert. He had jumped from post to post, Nevada, Georgia, Ohio, the Philippines, all with his young wife, Susan, by his side. She had agreed to marry him straight out of the military academy and had known in advance the peripatetic life of a young Air Force pilot, though she hadn't fully understood that it would be quite that peripatetic. Still, Edwards was what Borman wanted, and so Edwards was what Susan wanted. When he had applied for the transfer from the Philippines to California in 1960, he'd known he would be up against ferocious competition, with no guarantee that he'd even make it to the top tier of applicants, much less become one of the flyers selected. When he did get the transfer, he was thrilled at the news, though it wouldn't serve him well to look thrilled when he arrived in California. The man who made the Edwards flight assignments was Chuck Yeager, the 37-year-old lieutenant colonel and World War II fighter pilot who had long caused military flyers to feel equal measures of inspiration and terror. Yeager, the first man to break the sound barrier in a Bell X-1 rocket plane in 1947, had been famous even before achieving that long, elusive feat. Shot down over France in 1944 during his 8th combat mission, he was taken prisoner and placed in a POW camp. He escaped just 2 months later, quickly rejoined his squadron in England, and, 6 months after that, scored the fighter pilot's coveted Ace-in-a-Day distinction, shooting down 5 enemy planes in a single mission. There wasn't much the young hot dogs he had brought to Edwards could do to impress him. There's no such thing as a natural-born pilot, he would tell the men who believed they were exactly that. If you can walk away from a landing, it's a good landing. If you can use the airplane the next day, it's an outstanding landing. Keep it simple, Yeager told them, and you may stay alive. Borman reckoned he could do more than that. In the years before getting to Edwards, he had flown the F-89 and the T-33 and the T-6 and the F-84 and even the F-104. He had flown just about every plane he could get his hands on, and not one of them had been too much for him. One morning soon after getting to Edwards, Borman hopped into an F-104, intent on trying out a maneuver of his own invention. He called it a zoom flight, a nod to the extreme altitude and trajectory the exercise would involve. Both the plane and the new maneuver were their own kinds of trouble. Together, they were a two-headed beast. The F-104 was a relatively new plane. Test flown for the first time just 5 years earlier, it had been certified fit to fly only 3 years back. The jet was designed to be extremely lightweight and to fly at extremely high speeds. Just 55 feet long, it had a wingspan of less than 21 feet and an airframe made of such light aluminum that, for practical purposes, the whole assembly was little more than an engine with a chair on the front. The F-104's wings were positioned so far back on the body that the man in the cockpit could not see them without a rearview mirror. And the leading edges of the wings were so fine, just 0.016 of an inch thick, or about the same as a razor blade, that ground crews took to covering them with protective strips lest they brush past one and cut themselves. All of these innovations made it possible for the plane to achieve a reliable speed of Mach 2.2, or more than twice the speed of sound, with the right altitude and wind conditions. The aircraft's design, however, did not deliver much in the way of maneuverability. Supersonic speed means a wide turning radius, and a streaking jet is a little like an ocean liner that swings hard to port but doesn't actually complete its turn until miles later. One pilot who